Hello and welcome to this Android event tutorial brought to you by North Border Software. My name is Gary and this is part 3 of the series looking at how to pinch, zoom and pan. And in this tutorial we will get round to actually doing some panning of the image which we loaded into the custom view. Before we do that, I just want to recap on the methods here, the invalidate and request layout. Invalidate is absolutely essential for what we're doing here because that is what calls the onDraw method to allow us to change the view within the campus when we scale it and pan it around the screen. The request layout, I instinctively put this in place really because I was scaling the bitmap. So when I finished part 2, I had to think about it. Really, with request layouts, it's there to it's only really needed when we need to actually change the size of the view or the contents of the view. We're not in this case actually changing the size of the view. I've already set that to be max appearance in each of the horizontal and vertical directions, so I don't really want to change that. So there isn't really a need for a request layout. I think one of the key things, and it's probably a good tip, is that invalidate calls the onDraw method. Request layout may not call onDraw, but what it does do is call the onMeasure method, and you can use the you can get some dimensions of the views within that method and override it and reset the width and the height of the view itself. But for the purposes of this actual tutorial, it's not actually needed, so I'm just going to actually comment it out just to keep things consistent. But it's probably useful for you to keep that in there. It may be that your own projects do need to resize the views, so by all means use request layout and then override the onMeasure method. But to be honest, this is not really the focus of what we're trying to achieve in this tutorial. So what I want to do is actually get on with the panning side of things, because really all I wanted to do with I guess that method there was actually just get the image into the custom view itself. So what I'll do now is just set up a few more members here just to associate with the actual panning itself. So I'll just get these set up now. Okay, so just 4 members there. I need to record the position in the X and Y directions, the horizontal and vertical directions where we touch the screen. I'll also need to note the last position where I touch the screen, because we do need to offset the current gesture really with the previous one, otherwise the image will jump around the screen. So there's the basic ones in place there. The usage of those will come apparent when we actually go on now to actually put the code in for the panning. Whenever we touch the screen, and that really is it's a touch event, so what we need to do is actually override the onTouch method with specific code to instruct it as to what we need to do when we're actually panning the image on the screen. So what I'll do first of all is just let's get the onTouch method in place, and what I'll do is just return true here. Okay, so there are various touch events. So what we're interested in terms of touch events is an action down. So that is the point where we actually touch the screen, and we need to get the X and Y coordinates of that touch event, and we'll set the last touch to that position as well, so we can always offset any future coordinates against that initial touch. So before we do the action move, we might as well just get the code in place for the action down. So the first thing we need to do though is actually just define an integer for the action. And what I want to do is just get get the actual action. So for each type of gesture, it's going to return an integer value, which we're going to put into action. So what we want to do is set up a switching case for the two action events we're interested in, and the action events we're interested in is the action down. So that will give it a specific integer value, which is set by get action. And the other one we're interested in is the action moves. That'll be a different integer value, which we'll put in another case statement itself. So let's just set up the switch. And the first case will be motion events dot action down. So you'll see there's quite a lot of motion events. We're going to use a few more of these later on. That'll come clear as to why we need them. So I'm looking for action down. So I'll just put the break in for that. Okay, so let's just put the code in. So the first thing we need to do is get the x coordinate and then the y coordinate. So we just set up some floating point variables for that. And we just need the get x method. And similar thing for the y. Okay, so that's the x and y coordinates of where we actually touch the screen. So let's just put a little note in there. So get the x and y coordinates of where we touch the screen. And what we need to do is just set the last touch equal to that x and y coordinates. So that's we just want to remember where we actually started to touch the screen, or where the touch gesture started. So just put a note in there. So we'll just set last touch x, and we'll set that equal to x. And we'll do a similar thing for the y. Okay, so in terms of the action down, that's all we physically need to do. It's just tidy up the code a little bit. I'll just format that code. Okay, so we need to put another case in here now. So it'll be a case for the action move. So looking for motion events, and it would be action move. Let's just put the break in for that, and we'll get on with the code. Okay, so what I need to do here is just set up some the x and y coordinates again, so because we're going to just constantly record the x and y coordinates and constantly draw the canvas. That should be fairly obvious, and hopefully that makes sense. So we need to just do that again. We'll offset against the initial point where we actually touch the screen, just so, because we want to work out the actual distance we move in the x direction and the distance we move in the y direction. So we need to just take the current coordinates and subtract the start coordinates from that to get the offset effectively. So that's really all we're trying to do. So again, I can just really copy this code here, just drop it into this event here. So a little bit of careless typing actually. We just need to put the curly brackets in here, and curly brackets in for this break as well. and all we do is just format that code just to make that right. So that's why those errors just creeped in there or crept in there. Okay, so once we've got those in, we need to calculate the distance actually moved. So again, I'll just put a note into here. So calculate the distance in the x and y directions. So I need to just define the a couple of variables, floating point variables for the distance in the x and the distance in the y. So it'll be final, and we'll call it a float, and we'll call it distance x, and we'll set that equal to the current coordinates. It'll be minus the start point, so it'll be what's in the x direction. So you've got to kind of visualize this on move event constantly cycling through and constantly updating the x coordinate, y coordinate, and each time redrawing the layout. So we've got the effect of the image just panning across the screen. So we need to do a similar thing for the y direction. That'll be y minus the last touch y. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is actually move the object. So I've already defined some members for the x and y positions, so it's those we're going to include now. They're defined here at the top because we will use those when we redraw the canvas when we call the onDraw method. So let's go down and just write the code for those. So we just constantly want to update the position, so it's really just setting those to the distance x and distance y, and we're just constantly incrementing. So I'll just write the code out basically. So bn position x, so we want to set the previous value and add the new distance to the previous value. So it'll be plus equal to distance x, and we want to do a similar thing for the y as well. It'll be distance y. Okay. So what we need to do now is just record again the last touch position. So this would be really, we're just going to remember this touch position for the next move event. So if you don't do this, it'll just again, you'll just jump around the screen, probably off the screen as well. You can try experimenting with this, but you do need to have all these elements of code in place. So it'll be last touch x will be equal to x, and last touch y is equal to y. Okay, so we've done that. Now obviously this move event is just going to keep cycling through, but each time we cycle it, we want it to redraw the layout, so we want to call the onDraw method. So we'll just note that we redraw canvas. So we need to call the onDraw method, and we do that with invalidate. Okay, so and there's actually just one more thing we need to do. We obviously need to instruct the onDraw method to translate the canvas. So if we just go down to the onDraw method here, so just after that. We can just say canvas, and it'd be just translate, and it's just looking for it's basically just looking for the X and Y positions. So let's be position X, and it'll be M position Y. Good. So we're now in a position to actually test the this version of the panning we're going to do. First of all, we're going to test it on the emulator just to make sure that that works, and then I'm going to explain a problem or draw back with this particular approach, and I'll retest it with a real device because I want to show you what happens with a multi-touch gesture. So let's just give this a run for now. Okay, so the app's loaded, and let's just select an image. We'll pick this one this time, and you can see that's panning around the screen quite well. You've got all this white space at the edges, and you can actually pan it off the screen, so we can do something about that at some point, but it may be that this is what you desire, so that's good. You notice this is a single touch. What I'll show you with a real device is what I'll do, I'll have a finger on the screen to pan the image, then I'm going to place a second finger on the screen, and then I'm going to release the first finger, and you'll see the image actually jump to the position of the second finger. So that's something we're going to take care of in part 4, but I just want to demonstrate the effect of that, and I will encourage you to do the same as well, just to get a fundamental feel for what's actually going on. So we'll come back when I've actually got it loaded on a real device. Okay, so I've got the app loaded. What I'll do, I'll just get an image from my camera, and just put the camera image up, and we'll stick to London because it's kind of one of the themes. So you'll see it's moving around. I've got one finger on the screen, and what I'm going to do is put a second one on and take the first one off, and you can see it's actually jumped to that location. So that's something we're going to fix in the next tutorial. So hope you found this one useful, and catch you in the next one. Bye for now. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe if you find this tutorial useful. All the project files and source code are available for download on my website. Thank you.